To Philly Prime, and we have a real kind of holiday treat for you. We're going to go outside our wheelhouse now at Philly Prime and talk sports this week. And no one better to talk to sports about, especially the Phillies' most recent run into the World Series, than the Philly Fanatic's best friend and my friend, Tom Burgoyne. Tom, welcome to the show, brother.
Dave, it's great to see you. Thrilled to be here with you today.
Listen, I really appreciate you coming on, folks. This is going to be a real treat. We're going to hear about some of the World Series moments Tom's going to tell us about. We're going to talk about some of the folks that the Fanatic had on the field during the series. We're going to have a lot of fun here. And we're going to talk a little bit about Tom and his background and some of the books he's worked on, videos and programs he does. So let's kick it off, Tom. This was a heck of a run by the Phillies into the World Series. We're all disappointed that they didn't win, but some unbelievable games, unbelievable moments at the ballpark. Just give me your overall impression of this from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, going into the season after, we signed Schwarber and Castellanos and, we started, we went over the luxury tax. So the Phillies really, were going for it this season. And as the season progressed, we had our ups and downs. So I think when September came, we had a couple tough series there, but, we were right in the hunt. And just, when things started to take off and we started winning and making the playoffs and the way we did it, it was just so exciting and maybe caught everybody off guard, which I think kind of led to some of the excitement about, the great run that we had. I think those kind of seasons are the most fun. And then, of course, it brought me right back to 2008, 2009, and the long sellout streak of 250 some sellouts, and just the energy and the electricity, at the ballpark was unmatched. It was just great. Great.
And I remember those. I was in a helicopter for most of those games, sitting in center field for Fox 29, and I got to watch the games from like the best seat in the house there. Oh. I know the super boxes are great, but I'll take the chopper in center field anytime.
The chopper, Dave, that is the greatest thing, and we've talked about this. I remember you told me you saw it from the air, and I remember I've been in a helicopter with the Fanatic, of course, my best buddy, and I'll never forget it. I think it was opening day '95 at the Vet, and it was the 25th anniversary of the Vet, and we recreated when someone dropped a baseball out of the helicopter, and Irish Mike Ryan caught it. That was the opening of Veteran Stadium. And so we recreated it with the Fanatic hanging out the helicopter and dropping the ball down to Irish Mike Ryan. He was still a coach on the team in '95. But anyway, I just remember coming over the lip of Veteran Stadium, sellout crowd, opening day. It was actually opening night. And just so electric. So I can't even imagine you up there for the World Series. How awesome.
I was there for the last pitch when they won, when Lidge threw that pitch to Ruiz, and it was just an incredible moment, dude. I got to tell you. And then covering the instantaneous celebration that broke out on Broad Street. It was a cool moment. But enough about my cool moments. Let's talk about your cool moments. So listen, that was a phenomenal run in the playoffs. That stadium, Citizens Bank Park, was rocking every night. Everybody I talked to, including you, were saying that they've never heard it so loud. And tell me about that when you're on the field, when the Fanatic's doing his thing. Kind of what is that like when they're standing for every pitch and they're going berserk over every little good thing that happens?
It is awesome. And like you said, the Fanatic comes out before the game on that four-wheeler. And, of course, people go crazy for that. People go crazy when they show a highlight, or whatever we're doing pregame. The music starts and, you can just tell this is not a regular season game. There's a certain level of electricity. And then the game starts. And what's interesting for me, normally the Fanatic has a little bit of a routine. He then goes into the crowd kind of in the second, third, fourth inning, right in that time frame. And then he's on the field for a routine at the end of the fifth inning. But that time going into the crowd is always a big, fun thing. That's, Fanatic's in with the people. He's having fun in the crowd. Yeah. And normally when he goes into the crowd, people want pictures. It's all about the Fanatic. People kind of stop watching the game, in that section, but not during the playoffs, Dave. During the playoffs, everybody's standing, everybody's focused on every pitch, every pitch. And here comes the Fanatic down the steps, like, ta-da, here I am. And people are like, hey, Fanatic, a couple of high fives, but then its focus is right back on the game.
Yeah.
So what the Fanatic does, which I think is kind of neat, he just goes into one of the rows, wiggles himself in there, and then just watches the game with the fans. And so funny, every once in a while the cameras might pick that up. Like, it's just the Fanatic is one of 40,000 people watching the game, and I just think that's funny looking.
And let me ask you. I mean, it kind of built like a crescendo as the games went on. They got louder like every game. I'm like, oh, they're never going to top that last game. They're not going to top that game when Bryce bopped that home run. They're not going to top. And every game when I tuned in, there it was, and it just seemed so much louder as the games went on and the deeper they went into the playoffs and then into the World Series.
Yeah, no doubt. I think a couple keys there were, first of all, we won the first 6 home games. Unfortunately, we lost two in the World Series, and they were our first 2 losses at home in the playoffs.
Right.
So we were winning, first of all. Second of all, we were getting out to kind of early leads, like jump on them early. And so there's really no time for the fans to, be nervous and have that nervous, quiet energy. It was kind of like they get a big hit early and then it would just roll from there. And so, and there was always, like you mentioned, you'd had a Hoskins home run, or certainly that Harper's big home run in the NLCS. There were a lot of those, JT Realmuto with an inside the park home run.
Clutch, very clutch.
So there were big moments, and just like you said, it just kind of built and built. And we talk about it at I have my own podcast with John Brazier called Phillies Backstage.
Right.
And we just recorded one yesterday. And we were talking to a guy who's from England. He came over to, he's a big Phillies fan. He has a whole big Phillies following in London, and he comes over. The guy is amazing. But we were talking about the fact that it might have been louder during these playoffs than 2008. I mean, people have said,
seemed like it to me.
It's like the loudest people have heard it. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. Now, listen, during the game, in addition to sitting with the fans and doing all that, the Fanatic likes to rub elbows with some celebrities a little bit there. And you put this together. The Fanatic sat down with some pretty cool people during the playoffs and during the series. I'll roll off a little bit. Jason Kelce from the Eagles, always a fan favorite in Philadelphia. Miles Teller from Top Gun Maverick was there, who is like a diehard Philly fan, like Philly with a Y, and then a Phillies diehard fan. Talk to me about some of the celebrities that the Fanatic was kind of rubbing elbows with the whole series.
Yeah, well, the way that came about, the playoffs start, Dave, and the Fanatic likes to, kick it up a notch, and it really is kind of interesting when you're winning. People come out to the ballpark, and there is kind of a celebrity quotient, and celebrities want to be seen in the cool hip spot, and Citizens Bank Park was, during the playoffs. So, so we had that, and we started getting word that Sixers were in town. We tried to line something up, maybe with Embiid and Maxey coming down and firing up the crowd with the Fanatic. But the Jason Kelce one, when that started happening, it kind of fell through for one of our first the first divisional series game.
Right.
I just thought, Jason Kelce is the most beloved guy. I mean, just one of the people, and him and the Fanatic, I think, are bros. Anyway,
no doubt.
They have a lot in common.
If they weren't, they are now.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
So all we wanted Jason to do was to come out. Just his presence was going to fire up the crowd, and he came out and he just brought the energy. I mean, he lifted the Fanatic right off the ground, and we were jumping. The Fanatic and him were jumping up and down. Yeah. And then he decided to chug a beer on the field, to even get the crowd even more insane.
Yeah.
And, it was a great moment. It was funny. The next day I'm walking through the clubhouse, and I see Kyle Schwarber. And Schwarber looked at me, and he was with a couple of the other guys, and he says, what's the Fanatic planning today? I'm like, he'll just get another guy to go out and chug a beer on the field, in the 5th inning. And he looked at me, he goes, anything goes in Philly. He goes, anything goes in Philly, and so he thought that was cool.
Yeah. And look, there was some other big talk about Miles Teller. I mean, this is a guy who's in the movie with Tom Cruise, Top Gun Maverick. That's the biggest grossing movie to hit the theaters in a long, long time. well up over $1 billion worldwide. And this guy just loves coming to Phillies game. He's got the different garb on, official stuff every game. And you had a couple of interactions with the Fanatic, had a couple of interactions with him during that.
Yeah.
He's there every game. So he's like a built-in,
Exactly right, Dave.
Yeah.
He came to every playoff game, and I had gotten a chance to meet Miles a couple of times before. He's been down to spring training. Great guy, huge Phillies fan. But it's funny, we had the Jason Kelsey reaction, which went over great.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Miles Teller, to me, Jason Kelsey, was the ultimate, and I was like, Miles Teller to get that kind of reaction. And, I talked to some people, they're like, no, we should do something with Miles. He'll get a great reaction. And then we built it into a little skit where we had, Great Balls of Fire is from the movie. We had a guy who looked just like, Miles Teller in the Top Gun outfit playing the piano. Meanwhile, here comes Miles to kick him out and get everybody fired up.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I misread it a little bit because as soon as he came out on the field, the place went crazy, really went crazy. And I think, certainly that movie has kind of upped his, Q rating, whatever you want to call it.
Oh,
no doubt. For sure.
And Tim McGraw was at one of the games wearing his dad's jersey. Doug McGraw's 45. By the way, I'm sitting in my den. In my closet is the same jersey he was wearing. I've had that for years, and it's an honor to have that jersey. I'll just say that. Bruce Springsteen dropped in.
Yeah.
I didn't see Bradley Cooper, but Coop's been at a few games with you and the Fanatic a few times, right? So it just seemed like every game, it was like it wasn't the Lakers sitting courtside, out in LA, but it was pretty close.
Dave, you mentioned Bruce Springsteen. So I am a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. Okay. And so he came to one of the games. I caught wind of it. And it turns out the Fanatic is into Bruce too, Dave. So that's amazing. We have the same
Thunder Road, right? Thunder Road.
We have the same musical taste. I don't know why that is. But anyway, it took every ounce of energy not to go into the Diamond Club where he was sitting and just give Bruce a big hug, but the Fanatic played it cool. But I will say, I'll give you a little story about that, Dave. In 1999, Bruce Springsteen comes to Philly. He plays a series of shows at the Wells Fargo Center. One of the shows gets rained out because it was literally hurricane conditions in Philadelphia. So they canceled one of the shows. He comes back later in the year in September, 1999, one night only at the Spectrum, which, they weren't doing too many concerts at the Spectrum at that point. It was getting ready to get knocked down,
Yeah.
So Bruce comes. The Phillies have a game that night. We had our PR person before that date had called their PR people. Hey, the Fanatic could come over and give Bruce some, do something on stage, or give him some baseball bats, or something signed. He's a big fan, and they politely passed. But I don't think the Fanatic got the memo, because in the fifth inning of the Phillies game, after the Fanatic does his dance on the field, he drives right up the ramp, across the street to the Spectrum, goes right in. Of course, the guards are like, "Come on in, Fanatic!" And within 1 minute, the Fanatic is front row for Bruce Springsteen and banging his head on the stage and going crazy. And Bruce apparently wasn't real happy about it. He was in the middle of the song "Murder Incorporated," which is kind of a serious song.
Yes, indeed it is.
Glory days, he would have had the Fanatic up there.
Sure.
So it's, as it turns out, he kind of yelled. He turned his back to the crowd and yelled to his roadies, "Get him the bleep out of there!" And within a couple minutes, we had somebody from the Spectrum come down and kind of getting the Fanatic out of there. But
Fanatic, you got to leave, right?
Yeah. So the Fanatic was probably smart in staying away this year.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. The Fanatic kind of exercises all access pass to whatever venue you want. And I actually saw Springsteen's last concert at the Spectrum. It was a very cool moment to be there, and I'll always remember that. But it was great to see him at the game. Some of the other guys. Tom, talk to me about just for the Fanatic, what was kind of like a personal highlight during all this past season? Let's keep it to the playoffs and the World Series. Kind of what moment sticks out? Was it the Bryce Harper home run? Was it something in the crowd? Was it a little kid that just kind of stole the Fanatic's heart during that game, those games, that kind of thing? but give me a personal highlight here.
I'd like to say it's a little kid, high-fiving the Fanatic, but I got to say the Kelsey chugging the beer has got to be the one. Sorry, Dave, what can I tell you?
No, it's all right. Listen, I thought it was the best one too, but you're closer to the Fanatic than I'll ever be, so I figured,
the real answer is, and this is the truth, I've been very fortunate, to be able to be the Fanatic's best friend for this will be my 35th season.
Right.
And there've been, great, playoff runs, and of course, leading the parade down Broad Street in 2008 will always be a highlight for me.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, and this is I'm really being as sincere as I can, and that is every time the Fanatic kind of has that one-on-one encounter with a fan, or it could be a young fan, an old fan, somebody who's sick, somebody who just has been, just smiles when they see the Fanatic. It always just it's the best part of the job. What can I tell you? It's really the best part of the job.
Yeah. So many feel good moments.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole season, and especially in the World Series run. I know people were disappointed the way it ended and everything like that, as was I. And I'm sure the Fanatic was very disappointed. He probably won a couple more games, kind of thing. But listen, it was an incredible run.
Yeah,
I know everybody's thinking about next year, and maybe we should start hyping it up a little bit, because Phillies made some crazy, incredible moves this week. Starting with Trey Turner, 11 years, $300 million, our new shortstop. Nothing against the current shortstop and the current second baseman that's going to give up his spot now to the shortstop. We're going to move over there a little bit, but talk to me about the acquisition of Trey Turner. I know the Fanatic is a huge sports nut, according to his bio, so I know he's up on all the details here. But that's got to be an incredible move of all the teams. And it came out yesterday that Turner turned down $40 million more to go with the Padres. Awesome. So this is a huge thing. And Bryce, it sounds like, had a lot to do with it, because the two played together on the Nationals.
Yeah, a lot, I think, was in our favor. His relationship with Bryce, his relationship with Chris Long, our batting coach. His wife is from Jersey. They spent a lot of time in Florida. We're in Clearwater for spring training. So a lot of factors, but to leave $40 million on the table, I tell you, that'll be he was already going to be a fan favorite, Dave. I think he fits right into this clubhouse. You see how he plays. I think he's got more than 5 tools. He really does it all, this guy. He's going to fit in really well. But then a guy who wants to play here, who gave up money, left money on the table, he's just going to fit so well into the lineup. I think I'm not, making up the lineup card, but I would love to see him right there at the top of the lineup. I think he'd be a great addition there. So what I thought was interesting too, people, you talk about the money. We'll be paying the same amount for our middle infield. Stott is cheap right now because he's only going into his second year, and Turner the same amount of money we were paying Segura and Gregorius put together. So we just committed 11 years to Trey Turner. Yeah. But you have the DH. If you're listen, we're not going to talk about what it's going to look like down the road. But there's the DH in the National League. The fact is, he can play any position. He may move to the outfield later in his career. Where shortstop could be tough. But a great move. And then the Walker deal. Nice that we the Mets take a little hit to their rotation losing Walker. But that guy's been had a great year last year. Is really his numbers are trending the right way, right? In terms of amount of innings he's going to be able to give us. He's a ground ball pitcher, so that's nice. He keeps the ball, keeps it down. Some of the things. It's great that Aaron Judge just signed, the big contract, and all these media outlets, they're all about New York and Yankees, New York, and Judge, but the Phillies kind of are right. If that's the top story, we're 1A in terms of the Phillies being all in this year.
And not only that, they got Matt Strahm picked up for the bullpen, which is a great addition, and a little sneaky great move yesterday. Noah Song, a Rule 5 pickup from the Red Sox. I got to tell you, online buzzing about that today. That was like a steal for the Phillies.
Yeah, and it's interesting. He's a guy from the Naval Academy who's still serving, and so those rules where he'd have to make the 25-man roster or get sent back to the Red Sox won't apply yet until he's done his service. So he doesn't even have to be put on the 40-man roster. It'll give him a little bit extra time to develop and make the team.
And interesting, with Bryce having the Tommy John surgery a couple of weeks ago, I think Trey Turner comes at the right time here because he can fill that hole till we're hearing probably around the All-Star break. They're expecting to get Bryce back. But it's nice to have that piece with that speed at the top of the lineup or even in the middle of the lineup if they decide to bat him in Bryce's spot or whatever they decide to do here. But it's nice to have that kind of fill in right at the beginning. And then when Bryce comes back, now you really got the hammer.
Yeah, and who thinks? I know they say, not till the All-Star break for Bryce, but knowing that guy, he's gonna push that timeline up a little.
Yeah. Wouldn't shock me if it's June 15th. Let me put it that way, because he's a machine. He works in the off season like no other. Yeah. He clearly has shown that the last 2 or 3 years. He just brings it, every single game. That kind of thing. So what are you looking forward to in 2023? Another trip to the series, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. And just looking forward to that electricity. Again, my mind goes back to, those years where we had the sellout crowds. I think people fell in love with the team this past year. Yeah. And then when a team makes these kind of moves, we saw it back then when we brought in the Cliffleys and the Roy Holidays and these game changers, how much the fans responded to that. So in terms of buying, tickets and filling up the place. So that's what I'm really looking forward to just to see, this town. It's funny, Dave, there's always that, is this a football town or a baseball town? Our baseball fans are out there. Our attendances do reflect sometime how well the team is doing. We're not going to sell out every game, especially when we're not performing as well. But they're out there. People are watching games, and I don't think our players, really realized it. I know they didn't. There was some talk like, hey, when we get back to Philadelphia for these games against the Braves, is it, are the fans going to be there? Will there be sellouts? And I think their minds were blown as to, to see the reaction and the crowds there at Citizens Bank Park.
Okay. Do me a favor. Take us back in the locker room a little bit here. No company secrets here or anything, but how does the Fanatic kind of prep for a big game like that? And obviously these guest appearances and stuff like that. A lot goes into that. I mean, it's just not show up at the ballpark and wing it. Give us a little backdoor peek if you don't mind, if you can do it.
Yeah. It's definitely different. It's different in the playoffs because Major League Baseball comes in and they run some of the show, the in-game entertainment, what you see on Fanavision, what happens between innings. So, and God bless the Phillies, they're always fighting for the Fanatic. Like, hey, the Fanatic is an integral part of our in-game experience, and so they're always making sure that the Fanatic's routine stays the same. Hey, the Fanatic should still be doing this thing in the 5th inning, 7th inning. That is one little change in that you have to clear some things, with Major League Baseball. So, there's a little bit more of that going on. But yeah, so, he's just always up for a party, Dave. The playoffs is the ultimate party. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Now tell me, as close as you are to the Fanatic, these got to be a little exhausting too. By the time you get into the World Series after a whole full season, I mean, 81 games or 82 games. I mean, it's crazy kind of energy required every night kind of thing. And it's got to be a little exhausting kind of situation, I would assume, but you go out there and do it because the adrenaline, I guess, is just pumping.
Yeah, adrenaline's huge. I always look at a guy that Swoop. I'll call Swoop in the middle of, I talk to him, halfway through the Eagles season. Yeah. And he's like, oh, I'm so tired, halfway through the season. I'm like, halfway through the season, pal, it's 4 games. You you do 8 games a year. The Fanatic's busting his hump 81 games a year. So, but
in the heat too. I would say in the heat.
Exactly. Of course, the Fanatic's from the Galapagos Islands, Dave. So he's used to the tropical weather. But no, it is a long season. And the season, was extended by more than a month this year. It does shorten our off season, and the Fanatic does like the off season. It's not quite as hectic, that we could be at every game.
Right.
But it's totally worth it, Dave. Totally worth it.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, talk about the fans. I mean, I saw some of the ticket prices during the playoffs, and I think next year, I think you're going to see a lot more sellouts next year, especially with the addition of Turner, Matt Stram, Walker, and Noah Song. I mean, if they weren't electrified enough off the playoffs and the World Series, that just to me just bumps it up another notch. So I could see a lot of ballpark, sellouts next year.
Yeah, I think so. I really do. And we're already from an entertainment and promotion standpoint, we get that schedule back in June, what our schedule is going to look like the following year. And so our promotion staff does a great job of making sure there's a lot of fun stuff going on, our giveaway items and some of the promotional things that are happening during the course of the year. Just do an outstanding job at that. And it's funny, now we got Trey Turner. It's like, okay, we got to have a day where we're giving away a Trey Turner item. So
you have to have a Trey Turner day at least one.
I'll never forget one of the best ones. That one, Dave, I don't know if you remember, was Shane Victorino hit a walk-off home run on the day that we gave out his bobblehead doll. Yeah, and it was a little bobblehead doll. He was wearing a hula skirt. It was the coolest bobblehead doll.
I have one.
Do you have one?
Yes. My son has it. We gave it to my son. I'll put it that way.
That's tremendous. Yeah, and I remember Harry's call. Home run, Shane Victorino, Oya. Oh, I should know. He gave out in his home run call a Hawaiian expression, and so who knows? Maybe Trey Turner will hit the big hit on Trey Turner Day.
Yeah, cool. That sounds good. Hey, listen, let's talk about the Fanatic's best friend, St. Joe's prep guy you were, Drexel U. 34, 35 years in the making here. Kind of for the Fanatic's best friend. What is this like for you personally? What is that like? It's got to be incredible to be in your hometown doing stuff like that. Yeah.
It's a dream come true, Dave. It really is. I grew up in Jenkintown, and I was the class clown. I was the biggest Philadelphia sports fan, and people knew it. I mean, so saw an ad in the paper. It said mascots won it.
I was going there next, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's how I got started. I went to the prep. I was the Hawk for for 1 year, my senior year in high school. Went to Drexel. Was not the Dragon, but I was in a job sales, and I was selling business forms, computer supplies. I wasn't doing a very good job of it because 6 months later, there I am looking at the one ads in the Inquirer, which dates. I know that dates me, Dave. Nobody, I guess the one ads that nobody looks in the paper for a job anymore. But hey,
I'm older than you, so you can date all you want there. I don't care.
There you go. But anyway, there it said, man. I was looking for management. I was looking for under M, but marketing. But mascots won it. Answered it. And amazingly enough, the Phillies had placed that ad one time, and it was for the backup Fanatic job. And I had to go in and audition and interview, and got the job. I just couldn't believe it. When I left that interview, I thought, and audition, I thought, well, that was the coolest thing ever. But I'm sure nothing will come of it. Yeah. And it did. And it is funny, Dave. When you talk about I guess I feel like I was meant for the job. I'll never forget. I get the call that I got the job. I go to the bank that day. And in the bank is a woman who I knew. I was friends with her kids. Mm-hmm. And she sees me. Hey, Tommy, how you doing? I said, hey, Mrs. Doherty. She goes, what's new? I'm like, well, Mrs. Doherty, you'll never get this. You won't believe this. But I got a new job today. And she said, wait a minute. Don't tell me. You're going to be the next Philly Phanatic. I was like, yes. How did you know? And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah, that's what that's the job. Yeah. So I think that does kind of tell me that I was probably meant for this job,
Yeah. Cool. Hey, listen, I got to ask you. One of my friends, who I told we were going to do this today, said to me, "Ask him what it's like, to be so for the best friend of the Philly Fanatic to be so recognizable as the Fanatic everywhere he goes worldwide." We go into the list of countries that you've been to as through the Fanatic, and when you're not, and you kind of like a little anonymity at a restaurant having dinner with your wife. If they only knew, kind of thing. Just what is that like? I'm curious myself. I mean, I get the routine because I was on Fox for years and things like that, and I greatly appreciate when people stop by and say hello and stuff like that. But it's a whole different ball game here, that kind of thing for you.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it too if people recognize me. But I do really enjoy flying under the radar. It's funny. I remember I used to do a lot more minor league ballparks around the country. We called it a Fanatic World Tour, and I get done a long homestand, and then I'd be out on the road with the Fanatic and performing at minor league ballparks, and it would be fun for me to finish up. And this, they'd bill it Philly Phanatic night at Louisville, or name a little minor league town. Fanatic's been there, and I get a kick out of people buy their tickets. They want to see the Fanatic. You put on a show, and then usually I'd be able to leave the dressing room and maybe catch the last inning or so of a game, and I'll just be sitting out in the crowd, and people had no idea that I was just entertaining them, about 15 minutes prior.
Yeah.
So I do like the fact that I can kind of keep that low key approach.
Yeah. I want to go back to the team for just 1 minute because this kind of popped in my head. We had a lot of new guys this year on the team. Schwarber, you already talked about. Marsh, a number of other guys. Stott's first really year playing shortstop for a lot of games. It seemed, and Nick, it just seems like a lot of guys kind of meld and kind of meshed so nicely this year, and just at the right time, and in the bullpen meshed at the right time. Some years, and this from being a sports nut like I am, some years just your year. I mean, a lot of things can happen. An injury happened in the middle of the season of Bryce, and still all those pieces came together. I mean, credit to the front office for bringing the pieces here, first off. But the fact that kind of meshed and melded together like that, the way it did this year, it's kind of amazing if you think about it.
You know what it reminds me of, Dave, is, and I wrote a book about it,
yes.
1993 Phillies. Co-authored a book about that team. And that, to me, that team is the ultimate building a team that meshed right away, that had that chemistry right from spring training on. You had John Kruk making fun of Jim Eisenreich's condition, and that gang, from day one was in the clubhouse having beers till 3 o'clock in the morning. Never seen anything like it. Didn't think I'd ever see another team like that again. I think you make a great point. I think this team was right there with that club in terms of chemistry and gelling, and just having the right personalities gelling at the right time. Again, I think that Trey Turner and guys you mentioned, Tram and Walker, I think are going to be guys who have the same mindset, dog mentality, and you just love to see that in a baseball team with that mentality.
Yeah, and scrappy, man. I think that's the word that kind of works for me. All those guys like Marsh, I love him, man, because he's just Nick. They're just down and dirty, man. I got to do whatever I got to do, and I'm sure they're taking Bryce's lead on that, and he leads by example. That's why you want a guy like that on your team. And now to add Trey Turner to that, who's going to come in and work just as hard as Bryce does, that's like a two-headed monster there. When you add all those other pieces and you start kind of putting that lineup together, it's amazing. It really is amazing.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Bring it on. I love that we're talking baseball in December, Dave. I love this.
I know you do. And I don't want to get away from this without two things. Segura had a couple of really clutch games during the playoffs in the World Series, and we got to tip our hat to him, even though he's not going to be the second baseman this year. And I really got to say he stepped up a couple of times there that really made a difference. And Rob Thompson, I mean, how do you not say enough about him. I don't know your interaction with the Fanatic with Rob, but kind of tell me your impressions of him. A quiet leader, a guy who's been around forever in baseball, and he just steps in and, listen, I like Joe Girardi, great guy when he was with the Yankees. He's a quality guy. I've met him a few times, things like that. But Thompson just seemed to be the team.
Yeah, totally agree, Dave. Thompson, I'm a character guy, and Joe Girardi is a high character guy. So I had a hard time saying goodbye to Joe. But I totally get the whole understanding of Thompson changed, I think, the way that clubhouse thought. They could relax a little bit. Joe's a pretty intense guy. It totally reminded me of Charlie Manuel,
yes.
Taking over and letting the players be themselves. And also, boy, Joe did a lot of tinkering with the lineup. And I really like the idea that Thompson hardly changed his lineup. He stuck with some of the young guys. Stott was going to play. I think that was just a real key to the season was Thompson. And it totally, you mentioned Segura too. We do have a lineup that tends to be bashers. And, when you have that, you have those slumps, you have the ups and the downs, and you really do need a guy, the professional hitters, and Segura fit that role pretty well. I really believe Trey Turner, we have upgraded with Trey Turner because I think he'll be kind of that guy who fits that role of making contact and getting on base for our bashers.
Yeah, and it's nice to see Thompson giving the young guys, Bohm, Stott, Marsh out in center field, an opportunity. And I think they caught fire, in my opinion, because they knew he had their back, and they knew that he was going to play them in spots that maybe they wouldn't have got an opportunity to if he wasn't calling the shots. And I think when you get confidence, listen, I coached for 20 years basketball. I played basketball. When you get somebody putting their hand on your back and telling you, you got it, and you're in the lineup and you're going to go out and you're going to kick some butt today. It's always nice to have a guy like that.
Absolutely. And especially if you have that approach with younger players, it's all about confidence and breaking through. And he was able to instill that confidence in the players. And then, baseball is so much different, Dave, than basketball or football, in that you really, especially basketball, it's different because, basketball, the Sixers could have, 2 star players and go to the finals. Whereas in baseball, you need every guy in that on that lineup to give you to give you something. And, the Phillies daycare did it this year. And we just, you can mix and match. I'll go back to 93 with Jim Fragosi's use of platoons at, 3 of the positions.
Right.
And it keeps the whole team engaged and keeps them sharp. And I think that's exactly what happened with us down the stretch this year.
Okay. Listen, the Fanatic apparently has some free time, according to what I know about him. He's written 2 other books, and I'm going to talk about a new book that he has out in a second. 17 children's books, if I have this right. He's done 4 or 5 children's videos. He has a reading and literacy program. I don't think anybody kind of knows about that. And it's be a fanatic about reading, I believe, is kind of like the mantra for that program. But talk to me about that part of being Tom Burgoyne and being the best friend of the Philly Phanatic. It's a good platform and being put to great use here.
Yeah, well, and the books really came about because I had a neighbor who wrote a book about the 1960 Eagles. He worked at Pico, and I thought he just worked at Pico. I didn't know he was a writer, but he was a freelance writer in the area, Bob Gordon. And I read the book. I said, oh, this was a great book about the 60 Eagles. And then he had the idea, like, let's write a book about the 93 Phillies. Giving some of my insight and Fanatic stories and a little behind the scenes stuff. We did a similar book called moving on up when we moved into the new ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened was I did see, even after that first book, like, wow, the Fanatic should have his own book series. I had young kids at the time, so I'm reading, Barney, and some of these books are like, these books are kind of, if I'm a kid, I want something a little bit more hip and cool.
Yeah.
So I started writing these children's books. Had a long time illustrator of the Fanatic since the early '80s, Len Epstein, who passed away a little over a year ago. We collaborated on a bunch of books, and I was really miss Len a lot. But that series will continue. I have another illustrator in line who's going to help me with the next book.
Okay.
But then that in turn turned into this other book, Feel the Love, which is how the most powerful force in the universe builds great companies, Philly Phanatic style. I wrote it with a guy by the name of Evan Marcus, lives over in Jersey. And Evan is an executives coach. He's a consultant. And it's really a leadership book, Dave. It's about and a customer service book, too. And basically what we ask is, like, what company wouldn't want their employees or the clients, customers, whoever, to love them as much as people have love for the Fanatic? What creates that love, that loyalty, and it was interesting for me, Dave, because I had to when we were writing the book, I had to kind of step out of myself a little bit. And it's like, what is it that I do? What is it the Fanatic does? Why do people go crazy when they see the Fanatic, And so, some principles developed, and some things that are really universal principles and things that can be translated to the business world. And
you've been out on the speaking circuit a little bit with this. Talk about that. I know you want to do more of that, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've always gone and for over 30 years, gone and told my story and done speaking and done keynotes. But I got to tell you, when we did this book together, I got a little deeper into it. What creates the love, and having the corporate message, I think, has really helped. So I'm available to do keynotes. I have my own website, tomburgoyne.com. So you can request it that way. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can always try to find me there. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoy going out and telling my stories. There are a lot of stories. I keep my keynotes under 8 hours. I could probably do an 8-hour keynote if we're just going to talk about funny Fanatic stories.
Oh my God! Come on, really? You could do it. We could probably do 8 hours on a podcast right now.
I know we could. That's scary.
Two talkative guys, as we well know each other. And let me say something. I know a little bit about Tom, and his love for books is obvious when he has some downtime, because he likes to read books on the beach or wherever he might be on his days off. Always notice he has his nose in a book somewhere, or he's reading something, or he's working on a schedule, things like that. You never rest.
It was always a newspaper, and I miss newspaper so much. That's what I wanted to be when I
started as a newspaper reporter.
I know. I was going to say, I so respect what you've done, Dave. I mean, I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be the beat writer. I look at my old 8th grade yearbook. I had an 8th grade yearbook, and they say, "What are you going to be in 10 years?" I said, "I'm going to be the beat writer for the Inquirer for the Philadelphia Phillies." I was 13 years old or so. And I didn't quite get there, but I always love a newspaper. I'm still having a hard time. With the Inquirer, a digital edition. It's like, it's not the same. It's not the same.
No, it's not the same. And listen, I know family's big with you, Tom, and you have a big family, brothers and sisters, I think, who go to the games sometimes with you, get to go to the games. Your family, your personal family, that's a big thing for you. I know you like to include everybody. And talk to me a little bit about that. You're a big family guy off the field, too. Just something people don't know about Tom Burgoyne. I mean, he's not just the best friend of the Fanatic.
Yeah, I know. I have that identity crisis sometimes, who am I? No, it's and you mentioned family. Yeah, we spend it's really this whole ride that I've been on. My family, it's been kind of neat. My parents and my brothers and sisters to start really have been able to enjoy it because we're Philadelphia, sports nuts. And I think, they've been able to kind of enjoy the ride a little bit with me. And then, I do have 3 boys, and, they, when you say, what do you do when we, as parents, we all know, well, you spend all the time on a soccer field or a baseball field, or just, raising your kids. And now that they're older, I'm trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to start spending my time? It's been a little bit of an adjustment.
Yes, it is. I know all about that. Yes, it is. Especially when you retire, in addition to that, which is why I do the podcast and my website with George Anastasia, because you got to keep a finger in the pie, so to speak.
Yeah. So it's fun, but that's life is great, Dave. When you get to see your kids grow up and be, and live their lives, it's just it's great. It's great.
Yeah. I'm sure folks kind of wonder sometimes. How long does the best friend of the Fanatic want to make that happen for? I happen to know the Tom Burgoyne energy, and it seems to me like it never ends. So I'm going to say forever. Right?
Nice. Tell my back that, my back goes out more than I do, Dave. So,
I hear you.
But I've been very fortunate, actually, from that standpoint. I've been pretty fortunate with injuries. Mascotting can be it can be dangerous being the best friend of Fanatic. I have a funny story with that. If you got another couple minutes.
Yeah, sure.
I remember doing a game, and it was up at Lehigh Valley, doing a minor league game, and a foul ball comes into the crowd and hits the Fanatic right in the neck. Yeah, which wouldn't be a big deal, but as it turns out, the Fanatic's neck is my face. So I don't know how that happens. Fanatic gets hit, I'm the one with the big shiner. But
yes,
anyway, I remember everybody's laughing because they thought it was part of the gag. Hey, the Philly Phanatic got hit. And, Fanatic staggering around. But in reality, I was hurt, Dave.
Yeah,
I came through the row to the aisle, and sitting on the aisle was the person who was the Fanatic's bodyguard for the night.
Yeah.
And I hugged her and said, "Hey, listen, you got to get me out of here. I'm hurt, and you really do have to get me out of here." So she got nervous and quickly gets on her walkie-talkie and calls EMT and to come help out the Fanatic. And so we go up the aisle, and of course, what happens? There's 50 people waiting to get their pictures taken.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the big knot on my eye is growing like Fred Flintstone's, a big bulb. I can barely see out of the one eye.
But size of a bowling ball at this point, right? Yeah.
Right, but everybody needs their high five and their kiss and their hug. And meanwhile, I see the 2 EMT guys are running down the concourse. They're heading towards the Fanatic. I'm like, finally, I'm going to get some help. But the one guy pulls out his camera, his phone, and the other guy poses with the Fanatic for a picture. They weren't helping the Fanatic. They just wanted a picture. True story. And then they leave, and the girl who's following the Fanatic runs after him like, no, the Fanatic's hurt. We need EMT, not for a picture. So,
oh, my God, that's cool.
It all worked out.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, every team in every sport in every city in the country, where professional, minor league, whatever, has a mascot. But I did notice a thing at the end of your bio that is pretty remarkable. That Forbes magazine has named you the top mascot in the U.S. of A. Several times, I think. You're in the Hall of Fame at Cooperstown.
Yeah.
Those are some crazy good accolades, my friend.
Yeah, it's a credit, a lot of credit to a lot of people, Dave. I was so fortunate enough to step into the big shoes when Dave Raymond, who, if you have listeners out there who are Philadelphia sports fans, they probably know that name. Dave was the original best friend of the Fanatic. And just right from day one was, if I was meant to, be the best friend, Dave was first. And, I was fortunate enough that the character was kind of developed at that point. The Phillies as an organization they've just always provided the Fanatic with the tools, a little 4-wheeler, and to get to appearances, all the toys, if I have an idea, the Phillies are always supported. And so that's huge too. So there are a lot of things that have gone right, and it's great. This playoff run was really kind of really cool for the Fanatic in that he got a lot of. It had been a while since he was on the big stage, the playoff stage, and it was really nice. John, I hate to say it, John Smoltz. Listen, he's a brave. In the Fanatic's eyes, he's a brave. I'll always be a brave. And,
yes.
Him, Greg Maddux, all those tool bags. The Fanatic could care less. But Smoltz actually had some nice things to say during.
He did. I heard a few of them too. He was very, very, very nice.
So and that
I think you won him. I think you might have won him over.
I think the Fanatic won him over.
Yeah.
So no, it's been great to just be part of this ride, Dave. No question about it.
Yeah. Well, I want to say something. We're recent friends, you and I, but we kind of know each other's industry a little bit and appreciate each other's, industry and what we went through in careers and had to bring it on days when you don't really have the energy to bring it, but you bring it anyway. And I got to tell you, I respect the hell out of you just because you do bring it every time. And I know you talk about the day when you had the injury and things like that. I bet even though you were struggling to get up the aisle there, if you had to stop with one more little kid to get a picture, you would have done it. And I think that's what folks love about the Philly Phanatic, in addition to the antics and the, riding around on a four-wheeler and hanging out with celebrities and getting the crowd roaring, stuff like that. I just think they respect the Philly Phanatic and the guy behind the Philly Phanatic, you. And I have to tell you that it's an honor for me to know you and call you a friend. Let me say that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Right back at you, Dave. Thanks. Yeah. Really appreciate that. It's been great. Becoming friends here. Yeah. And it's been great. I totally respect what you do too. And
appreciate that.
It's a really great thing when you can do what you love to do, and I think we're both blessed in that regard.
Yeah, and we both like to talk, so that's a cool thing. So I will say this right now, the door is always open. And next year, if we want to do a couple podcasts through the season and the Phillies are all okay about that, come back and do it again, because this was a great time, a scintillating hour with Tom Burgoyne, the best friend of the Philly Phanatic, and I greatly appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. Downtime is important to you, and I appreciate you giving up a little bit to come on the show.
Anytime, Dave. This was a lot of fun, and definitely lock me in. When the Phillies take off next year, we're going to want to talk Phillies baseball again. So I'm there for you.
Absolutely. Thanks for being there, folks. Thanks for listening to Philly Prime this week. I'm Dave Stratweiser. Come back and join us again. And thanks again to Tom Burgoyne, the best friend of the Philly Phanatic and the Fanatic. We love having him on our team. Good to see everybody. We'll see you next time. Have a good holiday.